This is a teardrop camper from Chesapeake Lightcraft. It's designed by them, built and customized by me, and built for Arbortech tools. This story starts about 8 months ago in beautiful and historic Annapolis, Maryland at the Chesapeake Lightcraft headquarters. CLC has over 100 different designs that they offer as plans and kits. These are primarily different types of boats ranging from canoes and kayaks to even sailboats and power boats, but also a few paddleboards and surfboards, and even this teardrop camper that I'm going to build. All geared towards amateur boat builders like myself with a single boat on my resume. If you'd like to see a CLC teardrop in person, you should definitely stop by the showroom. I got to tour their space, which includes a full mill shop where they make all the solid wood components of the kits, a classroom area where they do builds in small groups, another workshop space where they do the occasional commissioned build if you're too cool to build it yourself, and then there's their CNC room, which is where all the kits are created and packaged to get sent out to you. I got there just in time to see my kit being built on their massive CNC from Okome. It's marine grade plywood. We loaded it onto my trailer and I headed back north to complete the build. Arbortech Tools is going to be using this camper as the home to demonstrate their power carving tools across the country, and the first week of January is the first show, so the clock is already ticking.
On this episode of Camper Constructors, Jackman and the gang construct the toughest camper yet.
Yeah, I don't think it will.
Can the constructors construct where no constructor has constructed before?
It's not great.
Or will their camper plans get cooked?
Parts that are over 8 feet long are pieced together with the puzzle joint, epoxy, fiberglass tape, and then sanded smooth, and the stitch and glue build process begins. Stitch and glue is a widely used boat building technique that you'll see me utilize throughout this build, and this camper is nothing but an upside down boat. Well, it's currently an upside down camper, which, according to my math, makes it a boat. It relies on the strength of epoxy resin and fiberglass to create intricate shapes out of plywood. It makes boat building very approachable for the average person. This involves aligning and holding the pieces in position with copper wire. CA glue is used to create a sort of tack weld, which allows the copper wire to be removed, or in the case of this bulkhead and hatch stiffener piece, the copper stitches are simply left in place and encased in epoxy. The epoxy is mixed with a thickener, and whenever it's going to be visible, I use wood flour. It's basically just a very fine sawdust, and then it's just like decorating an inedible cake. The goal is to create a fillet at all the corners, which adds an incredible amount of strength. I use filleting tools, which is basically just a fancy way to say sticks of plywood that are different radiuses depending on the angle of the connection. The thinner and also more obtuse angle joints, like the ones in the main shell of the camper, are reinforced with 3-inch wide strips of fiberglass. Think of epoxy like concrete and fiberglass like metal rebar. Speaking of obtuse, you'll notice Captain Sticky Fingers over here jumping ahead a lot to prepare pieces that'll be installed later in the build, like this main panel for the galley area. There's a lot of epoxy cure time, so being clever with the preparation of pieces saves a ton of time in the build. You'll notice some shims and blue tape when I install this piece and the corner panels. This is done with future Jackman in mind to make the job easier, a rarity for me. But eventually the back hatch will need to be separated from these pieces to give access to the galley area. I seal any hard to reach areas with epoxy before proceeding, and then it's time to prepare and install the floor.
That's what makes it fun. All that sandy. Are you on schedule? Feeling it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I'm ahead of schedule, but we'll see.
January sometime? No.
End of the year is the cutoff. I don't know. It seems quick, but also I'm not sure. Because like this is all the big stuff that goes quick. It's like framing a house.
Right, and then all of this is going to have functionality and it's going to have to work.
Yeah.
I would not have confidence.
Yeah.
I would have the confidence and I would maintain the pace.
Well, Mr. Mack was certainly onto something there. Confidence while maintaining pace is going to be required to get this thing wrapped up in time, with a lot more fiddly details on the way. The good news, however, is that once I got the camper upright, I'd also been working on the cargo carrier unit simultaneously. This is 2 of 3 units I'm going to be building that'll make up the final camper, and this gets installed under the camper on top of the trailer. This cargo unit adds 23 cubic feet of storage divided up into 5 compartments, with 2 open compartments on the front half, there's 2 drawers on the back half, and then 1 skinny compartment in the middle that runs the entire length of the camper. The construction technique is very similar to the camper. I'd call it stitch and glue minus the stitches, so glue, or more specifically, thickened epoxy. Everything is assembled with thickened epoxy or tack welded in place with CA glue, and then thickened epoxy fillets fill every corner, which are plentiful. Once cured, the epoxy boogers are sanded smooth, and every inside surface gets sealed with a couple coats of epoxy. This also includes the inside face of the 2 top pieces, which will be installed on the cargo carrier later. The next step for this thing is fiberglass, and fiberglass doesn't like sharp corners, so the whole thing is flipped over, the corners are all rounded, all surfaces are sanded, and any remaining gaps are filled. With the final sanding, both the cargo carrier and the camper are ready for a major milestone, the fiberglass. I enlisted the help from my friends Kristen and Mike from Total Boat. They were a massive help since they both have experience with this type of thing, plus it's critical to get the fiberglass cloth saturated with the epoxy before it starts to gel, so the extra hands were key to getting this big fiberglass job done all at once. This could also be done in multiple steps by myself, but with professionals like these nearby, how could I say no? While preparing all of those small pieces, the epoxy coating on the camper has cured. This means I now get to cut 4 gaping holes in my perfect teardrop camper. No pressure. I connect the dots on the pieces that will be divided up to make the back door hatch, the 2 side doors, and also the top hatch piece that will be removed. The best tool that I found to do this is my toddler-sized circular saw for most of the cuts, and then a handsaw or a jigsaw at the corners. Set the door cutout someplace safe, then climb inside with a mug of coffee and try the teardrop camper on for size. With the back hatch removed, I found a surprise that I left for myself and a lesson for this amateur boat builder, that I didn't use enough wood flour in that batch of thickened epoxy. Might be why I don't cook. I whip out my Arbortech mini carver with the mini turbo cutting head to take care of the mess. And then you won't even believe what the future holds. Yep, more epoxy fillets. All the inside corners that are now accessible get the same treatment as everything else, and then the Galley gutter pieces that I prepped earlier now get installed with a method that will feel very familiar to you. The perimeter of the hole on the roof is scuffed up in anticipation of the installation of the top hatch bezel. Much like myself, this camper is quite curvy, so this component gives me a flat spot to later install an exhaust fan. It's held in place with thickened epoxy, then capped off with fiberglass, and a few coats of epoxy resin, just like the rest of the camper. Now with the doors cut out of the sides of the camper, this means I'm lucky enough to not have to climb through the butthole of the camper anymore, and I can permanently affix the transom panel in place with stitches, CA glue, thickened epoxy fillets, fiberglass tape. You know the drill. Luckily, I sealed the inside of this panel with epoxy ahead of time, so all I need to worry about is the perimeter. I take a moment to extract myself from the camper, take a breather, and with the fiddly work complete, the camper can now get flipped upside down to prepare the underside for fiberglass, which will fully encase the camper in fiberglass. I also do the same with the cargo carrier, except there's a little bit of extra work with the varnishing and painting of the inside compartments, since those won't be easily accessible later. I left myself some particularly nasty epoxy drips in the center section of the cargo carrier, so I pull out the ArborTech power carving unit with the sanding head for some heavy-duty sanding. It's a critical part of my sanding tool arsenal. With the entire camper, cargo carrier, and storage box sanded and cleaned with denatured alcohol, it's all prepped for varnish. But that's not going to happen here. That'll happen at my other, less dusty shop, which means I need a way to get it there. And lucky for me, I just so happen to have this trailer here from Trailex that'll be perfect. I just need to put it together. This trailer is actually what the camper will be mounted on when it's complete. It's designed by Trailex specifically to fit this teardrop camper. A key feature of this trailer is that it has wheels. Another key feature is that it's aluminum, so it's extremely lightweight, and that, paired with the lightweight camper, makes it so it can be towed by anything, even my minivan. The trailer is a pretty straightforward bolt-together operation with gusset plates and hardware that just slides into the aluminum extrusions. The main frame is assembled first by bolting it together, the tongue is added onto the front, and then the axle is installed underneath. The wiring is pretty straightforward too, all hidden by routing it through the channels in the aluminum. And with the installation of the wheels, I flip it upright and can roll back to the barn to collect the camper. Now, I still have a vertical problem to solve, that being that the camper's on the second floor, and it needs to be, well, not on the second floor. Simple machines to the rescue in the form of a 2x4 ramp, a winch, and a steel beam and traveler that probably hasn't been used ever since this deck was installed. Now, we know for certain the camper will end up on the ground. That's easy. The challenging part is doing that with intention.
You got that? You got that all by yourself? Oh, you so smart. Whoop-dee-whoop. One says meat and one says balls. Are we in?
Oh, it's be real time.
Is this what it takes to be famous?
We're real. You got to be real. Okay, so slide. Let us out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
Yeah, I feel all right.
I'm good. It's so much further, but not that much further.
It's going to have a little overhang to it.
Wieners.
Thanks, Cam. Well, the camper is safely on the ground, fully intact. I temporarily fasten the cargo carrier to the trailer and the camper to the cargo carrier and bring it over for a spa day to get lathered in varnish. But first, I want to tell you about one last piece that I'm working on between all the dry time of the paint and the varnish. This is a piece that's going to be used for the back galley area. Typically, there's a kitchenette area in that space for camping, but I custom designed this module to fit ArborTech's needs better, while mimicking CLC's original galley design and assembly technique. Pieces are assembled with thickened epoxy and CA glue, and, of course, fillets at all of the corners. The cleats are all cut from 1/2-inch plywood with a 45-degree angle on the top of each one, and then they're glued and pinned in place to a sheet of plywood. This panel is later cut into 3 sections. This gives ArborTech some hideaway storage with a large space for a battery in the middle, smaller spaces with power strips on each side, all covered with the modular French cleat wall on hinges that'll be used to display their tools and even hold a TV screen. And then for the tool holders, I use the laser to cut out some custom designs from acrylic. These are glued together with acrylic cement, and I simply add a cleat to the back of each one of them. And they're not only tool holders, they're actually flyer, postcard, and business card holders too. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. Oh, your hand is in the shot. Every time. After 3 months of work, it's the day before the first show. So that means the camper's all wrapped up, right? Well, not quite. I quickly stop and take a few photos on the way to drop off the camper with Arbortech. They immediately hit the road for Baltimore for the first show. I reconnected with them at their stop in Springfield, Massachusetts, where I got to see the camper in action. And with that round of shows completed, it's now spring, and the camper is back because me and the camper have some unfinished business to settle. I think the camper needs something on it that's actually power carved. Plus there's a lack of custom Jackman flare on the outside. I'm going to take care of both of those things with a power carved mahogany cargo carrier facade with integrated doors and some matching bent laminated mahogany fenders. I believe it's time for a tour. Starting with the camper portion, you enter the passenger cabin through either side door with wooden hinges and tinted acrylic windows. Inside there is room for a queen-size mattress. Your feet point towards the back, and there's plenty of room to sit up in the front, even for me. There's a super convenient built-in shelf, and puck lights that are built into the door frames. For ventilation, there's an exhaust vent on the top of the camper with a built-in fan. That, paired with mushroom vents mounted on the corners of the camper, gives you great air circulation. Located in the front of the camper is a storage box, which is big enough to fit a cooler, or me. And then there's even drain holes in the back if you decide to put ice in there. Moving to the back of the camper, the galley area with a French Cleat tool and TV wall. The center section is built for a potential future battery, and the side sections each hide away a power strip. To power this area, there's a power inlet in the back corner of the camper. It's a simple electrical system for now, intended to be upgraded later once Arbortext figures out exactly how they'll use the camper. Under the camper is where the cargo carrier lives. It's lockable and watertight storage just like the camper itself. There are 2 storage compartments up front. The middle has a long compartment for things like umbrellas or boat oars. In the back there are 2 drawers with drawer dividers that can be adjusted to customize the storage space. The back of the drawers are hollow, so if you leave all of the dividers out, that allows for larger items like small surfboards to pass through to the front section. Inside one of the drawers is a collapsible step to help the vertically challenged reach the galley area in the back or the side doors because of the extra height of the cargo carrier. All of this sits on top of a simple but solid bolt-together aluminum trailer. Now for some numbers, the camper is 96 inches long, 66 inches wide, 54 inches tall including the cargo carrier. With the trailer, it's a little over 6 feet tall. The weight of the camper, trailer, and cargo carrier is just over 500 pounds. So basically, if you can put a trailer hitch on your car, you can tow this thing. The original prototype of the camper was towed regularly with a Honda Fit. To learn more, see below for all the links, plus special offers from CLC, Arbortext, Trailex Trailers, Total Boat, and Isotunes. Without all their help, this video wouldn't have been possible. CLC's designs are perfect for the first-time builder. The kits honestly don't take very many tools to complete, and although it's helpful, they don't even require a full workshop. CLC is also a great resource for marine plywood, boat building lumber, tools, building supplies, and other marine hardware and supplies. If you're ever in the Annapolis, Maryland area, definitely plan a visit to their showroom. This camper will be back on the road soon, so keep an eye on Arbortext social media to see if it'll be making a stop near you.